The Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G has proven itself to be a worthy contender in terms of benchmarks, charging, and camera, since it's the cheapest 108 megapixel smartphone in the world at just over $200. But how does it stack up in a real day in the life drain test? Well, let's give it a go here against the Mi 10 Ultra, Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, OnePlus 8T, and OnePlus 8 Pro. The Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G has the largest battery here with 4,820 milliamps. All of them have been updated to their latest available software. We have Android 11 on the OnePlus devices and Android 10 on the remaining devices. All smartphones here are kitted with 120 Hz refresh rates, so things are nice and smooth, and I'll be enabling it on all devices. We have AMOLED panels on all phones over here except for the Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G with a lackluster IPS LCD, which won't really bode well in terms of efficiency. I have dropped the Note 20 Ultra and OnePlus 8 Pro's resolution down from QHD Plus to Full HD Plus so it can match the other devices. The highest PPI is the OnePlus 8T since it has the smallest screen, and the lowest is the Note 20 Ultra since it has the largest screen. We'll be running through 15 different applications throughout the test. Each app will be opened on each device at the same time for the exact same amount of time with the same screen brightness as I showed you earlier using a LUX Meter. We'll be jumping between regular apps, social media apps, music streaming apps, video streaming apps, games, and even benchmarks. Really excited to get this one underway. This is TechNick, and without further ado, let's go. We're going to kickstart things off here, making sure that all phones are currently plugged in with their respective charger out the box, sitting at 100%, and we're going to test out the temperature before we get going with the test. We're using an infrared heat gun here with an emissivity level of 0.5 since it seems to be the most accurate for electronic devices, and a room temperature of around 22 degrees in Celsius. Remember, measuring their temperature at the current moment is pretty much their temperature while charging, so it's not so accurate, but after the first interval, that charging indicator below the percentage at the top of the screen there will change to an interval instead of charging. Time interval is at the top right hand corner. We have the battery percentage below the branding above the phone, and below that percentage we have the peak temperature as well as charging. Well, like I said, we'll change to the interval temperature. We're reaching that first 30-minute interval, and we have 96% on the Redmi, 100% on the Xiaomi, 95% on the Samsung, 96% on both OnePlus devices over here. So the Xiaomi is doing the best so far, and as you can see now, we've hit that interval timer. The hottest device is now the Mi 10 Ultra in terms of interval and peak, and the coolest being the OnePlus 8 Pro. Very surprising, since in my last test it was the hottest, it drained the quickest. It will be really interesting to see how long it lasts this time around with 120 Hz as opposed to the 60 Hz that I tested last time around. Hitting that 1 hour mark interval, we have 92% on the Redmi, 97 on the Xiaomi, 90% on the Samsung, 94 on the 8T, now going ahead of the 8 Pro with 93%. Hottest interval now is the Redmi, the hottest peak is still the Mi 10 Ultra from last time out, and the coolest peak and interval is still the OnePlus 8 Pro. For those of you who have yet to notice, at the bottom right hand corner, I have mentioned the current app. Right now we're on Shazam, and we're using screen recording on all devices over here, and we do have the specifications of each device underneath their actual phone at the bottom over there underneath their chin. After 1 hour and 30 minutes, we have 84% on the Redmi, 90% on the Xiaomi with a much smaller battery than the Redmi. It's doing a much better job, but you guys have to remember that the Redmi is using an LCD panel, so it's not going to be quite as efficient, and many people have said in comments before, when I use LCD screens, the LCD panel looks brighter. I did use a LUX Meter at the start of the test. I can assure you it is set to the same brightness as the rest of the devices over here. Only reason it looks brighter is because it's an IPS panel. After 2 hours, 77 on the Redmi, 86 on the Xiaomi, 78 on the Samsung, 82 on the 8T, still 1% ahead of its bigger brother, the 8 Pro, which has a 10 milliamp hour battery, a little bit bigger than the 8T, but I guess it doesn't really make a difference. It's pretty much 4,500 milliamps. So we have a standard of 4,500 milliamp cells on pretty much all 4 devices on the right hand side. The OnePlus 8 Pro, give or take a little bit, and the Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G with a 4,820 milliamp hour battery, much bigger than the rest, but it's actually doing the worst over here due to that screen. As I was saying earlier, 2 hour 30-minute mark, 72% on the Redmi, 82, 10% higher than that, the Xiaomi with a smaller battery, 73 on the Samsung, almost neck and neck with the Redmi, 78 on the 8T, still 1% ahead of the 8 Pro, with the Redmi Note 9 Pro now being the hottest in terms of interval and peak, the coolest interval being the 8T, and the coolest interval and peak being the 8 Pro, since it's matching the 8T when it comes to intervals. 3 hour mark, we have 68% on the Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G, Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G. What a mouthful to say. 78 on the Mi 10 Ultra, 69 on the Note 20 Ultra, just 1% between the Redmi and the Samsung here. 75% on the 8T, still 1% ahead of the 8 Pro with 74%. Ridiculous. 8 Pro does have a slightly bigger battery, but the 8T does have a much smaller screen. As I was talking about, when it comes to efficiency on the Redmi doesn't only just have an IPS LCD screen, but it's also using a mid-range Snapdragon 750G chipset, where the rest of the devices here are using a Snapdragon 865 or 865 Plus chip run on 7nm plus technology, which is slightly more efficient than the 8nm tech running on the Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G. The LPDDR5 RAM sticks that we see in the Mi 10, Note 20 Ultra and 8 Pro are also slightly more efficient than the LPDDR4X RAM slots in the Redmi and the OnePlus 8T. After 4 hours, we have 58% on the Redmi, 70% on the Xiaomi. The Samsung is at 61%, now pulling quite a bit ahead of the Redmi. Earlier it was just a percent difference between the two. The 8T is now pulling ahead of the 8 Pro this time. Earlier it was just a percentage, but now 3% ahead. And now we're currently recording using the selfie video camera on all devices. I've set them to 1080p 30 FPS, even if they can do more than that, just so that I can keep things even in terms of the test here, as well as comparing to other drain tests on my channel. We'll get to that in a bit. 4 hours 31 minutes, 51% on the Redmi, 62 on the Xiaomi, 53 on the Samsung, now just 2% ahead of the Redmi, 63 on the 8T, still 3% ahead of the 8 Pro with 60%. The hottest interval that time around was the Mi 10 Ultra. We're recording using the back cam now at 4K 30 FPS, and I've kept them all at 4K 30 FPS because the Redmi caps it at that, as well as all my other previous drain tests being recorded at 4K 30 FPS during that application time, and I want to keep things even so that you can actually compare it, and I do compare with a bit of a table at the end, so stay tuned for that one. 5 hour mark interval, 43% on the Redmi, 52 on the Xiaomi, 41 on the Samsung, 52 on the 8T, and 49 on the 8 Pro. The only two still in yellow, still above 50%, is the Xiaomi Mi 10 Ultra and OnePlus 8T. Very impressed with that OnePlus 8T device, hasn't given me any issues in terms of battery life. 5 hours, a 30-minute mark, we have 34 on the Redmi, 38 on the Xiaomi, 27 on the Note 20 Ultra, 40% on the 8T, leading the pack now, and 37% on the OnePlus 8 Pro. After that benchmark, I did run Antutu benchmark, and then I ran 3D Mark Wildlife, and now we're doing GFX bench. The main reason I do benchmarks is just to simulate high-performing games, because I can't exactly play 5 games on all 5 devices over here with just 2 hands, and that is the reason I do it. And I only do it for 1 hour because I think that that is more than enough in terms of testing out raw performance when gaming. I'm not sure if you gearheads out there do go crazy with games all day, every day, but if you do, here's some mini games after those benchmarks. And after those benchmarks, we have 24% left on the Redmi, 14 on the Samsung, 27 on the Xiaomi, 28 on the 8T, very close between those two. The 8T still 3% ahead of the 8 Pro with 20% now on the 8 Pro after 6 hours and 30 minutes, 23% on the 8T, 9% on the Samsung, 17 on the Redmi, and 22 on the Mi 10 Ultra. What is happening over here, Mr. Samsung? I thought that you would do better based on previous tests, but I guess 120 Hz, I had to use my LUX Meter to bring it back up, since the Samsung tends to dim after 5% of battery life. And after 6 hours and 55 minutes, the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra says cheers to us. Honestly, this is still incredible battery time. I regard anything over 6 hours of screen on time absolutely incredible. Will definitely get you throughout the day with more than enough juice left to get you even through to midnight. After 7 hours, we have 4 phones still going, 10% on the Redmi, 16 on the Xiaomi, 18 on the 8T, and 15 on the 8 Pro. Still a 3% gap between the OnePlus 8T and its bigger brother, the 8 Pro. We're nearing that 7 hour, 30-minute mark. Can all 4 devices that are remaining make it to that? Let's see what's going to happen here. Which one is going to take the cake at the end of the day? We have 4% on the Redmi after 7 hours and 31 minutes, 9% on the Xiaomi, 10% on the 8T, just 1% difference between the Xiaomi and the 8T. The 8 Pro is falling behind now with 8%. Which one of those 3 devices is going to make it? I'm pretty sure the Redmi will knock out first, and it is indeed 7 hours and 44 minutes. Still absolutely great for a device using a lackluster mid-range 8nm chipset and an IPS LCD screen, but it does have a bigger battery than the others, though not that much bigger to make it reasonable to last a hell of a lot longer, but it still did a great job nonetheless. 10 minutes after that, 7 hours 54 minutes, the phone that cost 3 to 4 times the price of the Redmi, the Mi 10 Ultra, didn't do a bad job over there with a milliamp hour per minute reading of 9.49, which is the best out of the 3 that have capped out. 8 hours and 1 minute here, 3% on the 8T, 2% on the 8 Pro. These OnePlus devices are doing an absolutely fantastic job in terms of battery life at 120 Hz refresh rate. I would say even better than their 60 Hz option. The OnePlus 8 Pro finally gives up after 8 hours and 16 minutes, which is still great, getting the best milliamp hour per minute reading. And the OnePlus 18 not long after that, 8 hours 22 minutes, just 6 after the 8 Pro, but it does have a smaller screen, remember, so it is understandable. Absolutely superb battery life with 8.96 milliamp hours per minute for the 8T. Fifth place, we have the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra getting 6 hours and 55 minutes of screen on time with the brightness setting that I set at the start. Still absolutely phenomenal battery life for a Samsung device nonetheless. The Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G in fourth place, 7 hours and 44 minutes, almost an hour longer lasting than the Samsung and a hell of a lot cheaper than that. We have the Xiaomi Mi 10 Ultra, 7 hours 54 minutes, just 10 minutes longer lasting than its little brother, the Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G. Still incredible battery life, over 8 hours here. The OnePlus 8 Pro, 8 hours and 16 minutes, 120 Hz refresh rate panel with a 4510 milliamp hour battery is fantastic. Even more fantastic, first place, the OnePlus 8T, its cheaper little brother with 8 hours and 22 minutes. Not a big gap between the two devices, but it does have a slightly smaller battery and did an incredible time over there. Comparing it to screen on time results of all other smartphones on my channel, which I have tested with high refresh rate panels during a drain test. At the top, we still have the Huawei Mate 40 Pro with over 9 hours, though not quite a big difference between that and the OnePlus 8T with a slightly higher refresh rate at 120. The OnePlus 8 Pro right behind that. The Mi 10 Ultra and Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G pretty much slap bang in the middle of the table, and the Note 20 Ultra quite down low there, but not quite the worst, not quite the best. It still did a fantastic time when enabling 120 Hz. I just wish that we could test it out with QHD enabled as well. Based on previous tests, the Mi 10 Ultra actually did a slightly better time than last time I tested it with 120 Hz. The Samsung did slightly worse than last time I tested it. The OnePlus 8T surpassed its last check with 120 Hz, but couldn't quite hit the heights of its 60 Hz counterparts. The OnePlus 8 Pro did a much better job than the 120 Hz and the 60 Hz option since this recent software update that I got, improving Android 11's optimizations within the device. And talking about temps, the Samsung actually ended off with the worst at 43.8 degrees in Celsius. The Xiaomi had the highest peak with 56.5 degrees in Celsius. You could pretty much fry an egg on it at that point. The coolest peak on the Redmi with 51, and the coolest end temp being on the 8 Pro. Very surprising here considering my last rain test with it at 33.8 degrees in Celsius. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it. A sub to the channel would be fantastic. This is TechNick, and I'll see you in the next one.